Cordelia, we have more than enough saber faces at this point, so don't add to the pile. But yeah, pretty much right off the bat, the episode established that the spotlight character of this one was going to be the perfectionist, flowery-eyed Cordelia. And that latter trait would become immediately apparent as she looked at her team's past before they lost their toys with the rosiest of rose-tinted glasses, which, yeah, based on their current behavior, I have my doubts about her accounts. But yeah, obviously these girls had hit rock bottom, with them going from their daily steak dinners to just the potato on the side, which honestly isn't that bad. I mean, potatoes are awesome. Though fortunately for them, they could also harvest mushrooms from their rotting old desk. Yeah, just have this guy taste them and you should be okay. Granted, harvesting and eating poison mushrooms was probably a better use of their time than actually participating in this class. Jeez, Fujipi went down hard after graduation. Anyway, determined to reform her flowery-eyed vision of her team's past, Cordelia tried to help serve up the very likely dangerous shrooms. Fortunately, they did get some help from Nezu, who again does have probably the second most practical toy amongst the Thief Empire with his pyrokinesis. That said, because he was voiced by Hiroshimono, he also was kind of destined to be the loser.
And believe me, Finster, this hurts you more than it does me!
And as if acting as an early indicator that these two would go on to voice Applejack and Rainbow Dash, Nero and Cordelia argued who was more at fault over this, hint it's always the orange one. Dio would be proud of you two. Later, Cheryl tried to look for her friends. Well, considering what she does throughout the series, that's actually the most logical place she'd be. Instead though, she ended up finding a stray cat that her team quickly took to. They named it Kamaboko, a kind of pink fish cake that you've likely eaten with your ramen. Though in this case, it acted more like the missing ingredient in Cordelia's flowery-eyed vision of her team. So yeah, I'll say right now, Cordelia is probably my favorite member of Milky Holmes. The primary reason isn't quite apparent yet, though we'll see it in just a bit, but a part of it is that she is quite nice. Over-romanticized or not, she did legitimately want to see the best out of her team, and even when they, mostly Nero, were being ungrateful, she did want to try at least find some middle ground. Again, this isn't really my favorite aspect of the character, but it is a nice bit of characterization worth pointing out. However, I guess it was about time to introduce an actual conflict to this episode, which came about once Ishinagai noticed that they had run short on bread and literally pointed the finger at Milky Holmes. And to be fair, he did have solid reasoning based off of some earlier scenes, including when Cheryl originally picked up Kamaboko. But of course he didn't realize what she was doing, and that the actual cat burglar behind all of this was just that, and their school didn't allow pets. Realizing this, Cordelia didn't want to lose the flowery vision of her team, even if it meant she couldn't partake of it herself. Yeah, are we sure this is the same VA as this character? Of course, her friends didn't believe this and tried to discover the truth for themselves. This resulted in the first time we got to see the absolute brilliance of Cheryl's detective work.
That makes sense to me.
Also, a little side note, but this guy's gonna have a much bigger role next season. Eventually, they did manage to find the true culprit in Kamaboko and understood why Cordelia took the fall for him. And as it just so happened, Ishinagai was watching. Feeling guilty about his false accusations, he decided to drop all the charges. Okay, now she's starting to sound like Tomoko. And likely realizing that the cat had brought them back together, Henriette turned a blind eye to Milky Holmes having a pet on campus. With that, the episode ended with our heroines heading back to their little flower garden, while Ishinagai pulled his best Shinken Blue impersonation. Moving right into the next episode, since we have the time, episode 3 featured the proper debut of the Genius Four, who did appear briefly in the first episode. Basically, they were the police counterparts to Milky Holmes. They were led by Kokoro Akechi, named after Kogoro Akechi from the works of Rampo Edogawa, and yes, these two were also named after him. Then, for whatever reason, they all seem to be antagonistic to their story's respective protagonists. Tsukiko Zenigata, because you gotta have one in every crime anime, Hirano Hasegawa, named after a fictional cop from the Edo period, and Saku Toyama, named after a real-life guard to the Tokugawa shogunate, and Luca cosplayers. Seriously, they made the reference later. But yeah, they had been tasked with safeguarding the Venus de Hama, not de Milo, but rather the Venus to Yokohama, the setting of this anime, and it was the muse to the longest ongoing anime ever. And yet, this is actually one of the more subtle parodies in this show. Anyway, Henriette had shown Milky Holmes Kokoro's dissing of them to egg them into action, which her minions interpreted as the opposite and saw it as her demeaning them into giving up. This is actually one of my favorite running gags of the series, with the Three Stooges never catching on to their boss's real intents. But yeah, Milky Holmes went into action and were quickly caught by the G4. However, Kokoro, being totally on the level and not holding Squidward levels of resentment towards our heroines, decided to help them get their toys back. She did this by actually bringing up an interesting concept for this world, where historical figures might have used toys to perform their legendary acts, like Moses parting the Red Sea. Thus, if they followed the writings of ancient Egypt, they might have come upon something.
Ow!
Oh, come on, when have the Egyptians ever been into playing children's game? Point retracted. No, of course, she was totally trolling them after they had upstaged them multiple times in the past, which, if you actually did have the IQ you constantly brag about, maybe that wouldn't be a thing. Yeah, honestly, I do find this character pretty damn annoying, especially compared to the rest of her team, who are actually kind of fun. Anyway, after a few rounds of Egyptian Twister, that I can't show too much of without the real authorities coming to my house, Elly bailed when almost forced to assume a certain position. This resulted in Nero again blaming her teammate for their misfortune. Yeah, you see, this is why you're the least popular member of this team. The Thief Empire soon arrived and turned out the lights, and this is where we learned how Cordelia had just a slight fear of the dark. Again, my favorite heroine of this show. The thieves managed to take the statue thanks to a little deception from Arsene's illusions. However, to the G4's credit, they had set up a trap of their own by replacing the statue with a fake ahead of time and sticking a tracking device on it. And they would have been able to discover the thieves' HQ, but rampaging Cordelia interfered with that. Thus, they were taken into custody. Your tax dollars at work, folks. Understandably, not wanting to devolve into total societal moochers, that would be more for next season, Henriette bailed them out. With that, the Elly subplot proceeded, with her still feeling guilty about failing her team and Nero not helping matters. Thus, she tried to play the Twister game again by herself. So yeah, while this character's whole bit is mostly just being a covert pervert, I do like that she is probably the most sensible member of this team. She's not blinded by distorted visions of the past like Cordelia, and does try to be the most proactive member of Milky Holmes, but often just doesn't have the assertiveness to do so. I honestly probably relate with Elly the most, having my own social awkwardness, even though again, she's not my favorite member of this team. Speaking of which, they tracked her down after Nero again realized that she had been kind of an a-hole to her friend. Yeah, okay, maybe it's because I'm reviewing these back to back, but it is frustrating to see this character seemingly not learn her lesson to treat her teammates and friends better. Anyway, the Thief Empire were also there to retry their caper and believe that Milky Holmes were the ones who hit the real statue. This led to an actually pretty fun fight with some great animation, as even without powers, our heroines managed to hold their own, with some fun sequences like Cordelia blocking attacks with an ancient mask, or 20 running out of cards to throw, and being forced to use other objects on this person. Okay, that wasn't quite as good. Eventually though, he and Cordelia got trapped in a tomb, and while her established fear of the dark would have been bad enough, by monetization, you weren't really paying me all that well anyways. Understandably, both the heroes and villains called a truce before they would all have to retire out of shame. And while all 5 of them together couldn't get open at first, Elly, driven by her determination, managed to briefly reactivate her Toy of Strength. All of this had been witnessed by Arsene, who, as I said, had been pushing Milky Holmes throughout this episode. And with that, the episode ended with our heroines believing that the Twister game actually worked and retrying it whilst the G4 cleaned the museum. Again, while these episodes only really had the brief explosions of insanity that the series would be more known for, I do like that they were also some pretty strong character building episodes. Cordelia, over both of these episodes, got to show her truckloads of personality, while the shy Elly got her amiable and awesome moments in. Hell, even Nero got her time to show how much of a trash character she was. And yeah, while there were certain parts like Kokoro that did annoy me, I do also think that they're kind of part of the experience of this show. To say the least, there was always something happening in the show, to the point that it is actually hard to summarize it all without just recapping it in its entirety. And while some of it, like 20's exhibitionism and Nero and Kokoro's jerk-ass behavior, could be grinding, they were at least in favor of building a couple of characters up. Cordelia is just a hilarious character, with her bombastic pursuits of regaining her team's former glory, and yet she was also very selfless in her pursuits, even taking the fall for Kamaboko if it meant her friends could maintain her dream for her. Meanwhile, Elly did at least try to help her friends in spite of her anxieties, and even briefly regained her powers in the process. If this had been a more traditional magical girl show, these two really would have been major standouts of their team, but as is, they're still really fun characters, providing both a lot of laughs, and also a little hard for this more satirical take on the genre. And really, whatever show you're trying to make, you should try to reel in your audience with some good characters like this. And overall, these episodes did a great job establishing a couple of the stronger members of this team. Cheryl, and yes, even Nero, will have their time to shine too, just as soon as they finish off their potatoes. Just when you think Toei's done announcing stuff for their upcoming projects, they just keep pulling us back in. Yeah, honestly, just before we were going to record this video last night, Toei went to reveal the staff and a teaser visual for the upcoming Ultimate Pre-Gear 23. If you're inclined, go check out a slightly slapdash video we put together as a result, and I also hope that nothing else gets announced because I try not to overload our weekly output of videos with this sort of stuff. Still, I guess look forward to more stuff, and until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and nope, the bulb went out. Cordelia, remember your breathing exercises?